Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. In the face of her attitude, Miss Thompson's temper flared. She stared icily at Nicole as she raised her voice. "You have the cheek to ask, what did you do? You are causing trouble here and affecting the studies of others. Do you not know that the exam is next Monday? I want to see what sort of grades you'll get. If you dare to get 0 like in the mock test, then just wait to get expelled." Nicole looked at Miss Thompson's stereotypically serious face. If it was just her face alone, no one would expect this meticulous teacher to be corrupt. Not to mention that this teacher was also someone who misused her authority to exact personal vengeance. When Nicole thought of this, she felt a little ridiculous. She raised her eyebrow a little and tossed aside all pretense of politeness. Just wait for the results then. All the talk about her affecting the results was just an excuse for Miss Thompson to come and pick a fight with her. When Miss Thompson heard what Nicole said, she was caught off guard at first before hissing irritably, "Who doesn't know that Class B is no match for Class A? No matter how you try, you cannot surpass them. I know this very well. No one is hoping you to add to the grades. Instead, it'll be more than enough if you lot don't hold everyone else back." She thought that when Nicole talked about the results, it was for her to see if Class B's performance had regressed or not. Class B's performance is many times worse than Class A. Nicole is just shirking of responsibility. I don't want to listen to her at all. She sure is cunning. She actually wanted to use the class average to hide her personal shortcomings. Miss Thompson thought that she had seen through Nicole's tricks and was awed by her own intelligence as she looked at Nicole with even more contempt. No matter how smart Nicole is, she cannot escape the palm of my hand. Thinking of this, Miss Thompson frowned and wanted to say something else, yet before she could open her mouth, Nicole's calm voice rang out instead. "It isn't based on Class B's results." Nicole looked at the conceited Miss Thompson and rather patiently elaborated. "It's my own results." Miss Thompson looked at Nicole's calm face in astonishment as she then asked a question in a daze. "What did you say? Your individual results?" She then laughed uncontrollably. "This brat sure is funny. She gets cocky at the thought that her results in Great Oak were decent. Any bottom feeder in Royal Creek Institute can score better than her. She's too conceited." This was the reason why everyone was making fun of her when Nicole said she wanted to give tuition to Austin and the others. They all thought that if Austin was the first place from the bottom, Nicole's Asperian grades at Great Oak might be very well the same as Austin's. Not to mention that the quality difference in teaching and scoring was so different. None of these proud students thought that Nicole, who was from a rural place, could compete with all of them who had undergone many rounds of selection. This was also the reason why most in the Royal Creek Institute refused to accept Nicole. To them, Nicole was a person who had got in through some connections. They felt that she was not fit to sit and study together with them. Moreover, their campus queen needed to be the epitome of beauty, intellect and grace, with no shortcomings in either category. No matter how beautiful and skilled she was, they perceived she was intellectually behind them. In their eyes, a person with bad results was straight away marked as useless garbage. Everyone looked at her. I never expect a brainless bimbo like Nicole would say that the bet would be based on her result. Many had stopped bad-mouthing Nicole without reason, but when they heard her saying such a hilarious thing, they could not help but laugh at her with a low voice. "The ignorant are always fearless. Doesn't she know that Royal Creek Institute is filled with geniuses? Any single one of us could be the ace in other schools." When they thought of this, they looked at Nicole with some pride in their eyes. Nicole did not look at the people around her as she calmly stared at Miss Thompson, who was still laughing. She then closed the book in front of her. Better not let her saliva stain my book. When Miss Thompson saw Nicole's action, she suddenly stopped laughing. Nicole sure has thick skin. She is so unperturbed after being humiliated like this. It is as if she had quite the confidence. Yet, Miss Thompson pondered, "Nah, how could it be possible?" Previously, Nicole's mock test result was there for all to see. No one would deliberately score 0 to fail their tests. She looked coldly at Nicole, disdain seeping out of her eyes. "Nicole, since you dare to say that, I'll wait and see." Miss Thompson paused for a moment. As she looked at the girl who did not even look back at her, a tinge of schadenfreude appeared in her voice. Remember what I said. If you still score 0, you can forget about coming to this school ever again. You hear me? Nicole was not at all perturbed by her intimidation. Vivian, who was seated at the front, turned around to look at Nicole with a trace of malice in her eyes. Miss Thompson, Nicole has purposefully disturbed us to drag our grades down so it will not be obvious even if she scores poorly. Oh? Is that so? Thought Miss Thompson when she heard what Vivian said. She felt that it made sense. She then squinted her eyes as she looked at Nicole, not expecting the latter to be such a scheme. Indeed, if everyone else does poorly, she won't look out of place even if she scored poorly herself. Nicole, I never thought you to be such a scheming person. Many were carried away by Vivian's words and took it for real. After all, Nicole had so many things happening around here that they were distracted trying to keep up with everything. No wonder she is not afraid to let Miss Thompson look at her result. It turned out she is plotting this. Everyone then gave Nicole a slightly resentful look. What a girl you are, Nicole. We thought you were not a bad person, but now it seems like there is indeed something wrong with your character. Gary, who was seated at the back, too looked at Nicole with his brows furrowed, a trace of doubt appearing in his eyes. All this while, Nicole has not been paying attention to class, nor has she attended the math Olympiad classes, yet she is boasting here, thought Gary as his expression changed a little. Could it be that she is trying to drag everyone's grades down like what Vivian said? Vivian looked at Gary's gradual solemn expression and felt good inside. I finally got Gary to see Nicole's true personality. Vivian then gave Nicole a righteous look, yet a deep sense of schadenfreude was inside her eyes. Let's see how you come out of this unscathed. Nicole glanced at Vivian and gave Miss Thompson a totally impassive look as she said, matter-of-factly, I've never planned to affect the grades of others. She gently tapped the desk with her index finger. When she recalled how Mr. Riddle Sr. hoped that she would do well in this exam, she looked at the people who were mocking her so wantonly and let out a proud and condescending smile. I'm not at the least bothered if all of them give their best. So why would I even bother affecting their grades? What? Everyone looked at Nicole, with only Lulu, June, and Bradley sitting calmly where they were, not even blinking. Jack and Wayne, who did not understand what was going on, gawked as they looked at Nicole. Being looked down upon like this, even they, the bottom-ranking students, are angered, much less those uppity high achievers. Sure enough, after listening to what Nicole had said, everyone looked at her angrily. If it were not for Miss Thompson still standing there, they would probably have rushed over to teach her a lesson. Even Miss Thompson was rendered speechless by that. By the time she realized what Nicole was on about, her face was fuming red. Nicole, you are... Miss Thompson wondered, is she hopelessly stupid, or is she just way overconfident? Immediately after, Miss Thompson curled her lips as she looked at Nicole and turned to leave. Fine, since you are that conceited, let's just see how things go then. She thought, Nicole is stupid enough to offend the entire class. I have no need to bother about her. I can just leave her there to fend for herself. Just as Miss Thompson was about to walk out of Class B, Nicole's flat voice came from behind. Miss Thompson, don't forget about our bet. Miss Thompson was taken aback for a moment before recalling the bet she made with Nicole for that fool, Austin. If Austin were to get into the top 20 in this exam, Miss Thompson would need to apologize to him before everyone in school. If Austin failed to do so, then Nicole would need to leave the Royal Creek Institute. Well, it seems like that bet did not matter at all. After all, if Nicole does not do well this time around, I will expel her from the school. As for Austin and those bunch of useless garbage, no doubt that them getting into the top 20 from the bottom is already a tall order, thought Miss Thompson as she sneered while staring at Nicole. She then said loudly, I'm a woman of my words, but I'll advise you to worry more about yourself. If Austin cannot get into the top 20, you'll be expelled. As she said that, she strode out as if she had just won a battle. After Miss Thompson left, many wanted to ask Nicole what she meant. But after seeing her cold, indifferent eyes, many quickly calmed down. No one dared to provoke her, but their gaze was full of disgust and disdain. Nicole's words were simply just too conceited. To say that she could not be bothered even if we were to give ours all. She probably knew that she could not beat anybody, so she went crazy. We have no time to be bothered with a lunatic like her." When Vivian heard Nicole, she too thought the same. Nicole must be out of her mind for her to say such a thing. A silent smile appeared in her eyes as she looked at Nicole with an eye full of ill intent. Nicole, you've offended everyone in Class B. It isn't that I don't want to help you, but I'm powerless myself." As she thought of this, Vivian said, "Nicole, everyone heard what you said. As the class rep, I will make sure you see through what you said." There was a hint of schadenfreude in her tone, as if she wanted to get rid of Nicole as soon as possible. "If you only know how to talk big and not pull off what you said, you'll have to bear the consequences. Don't go back on your words when the time comes." Vivian thought, Ms. Thompson said if Nicole's grades are poor again this time, she'll be forced to drop out of school. The day has finally come. Once she is expelled, the school will return to normal. On the other hand, Nicole's expression did not change at all. As she looked on impassively at Vivian, her voice had a tinge of iciness that could directly pierce one's heart. "Isn't this what you want?" Vivian was stunned, and she could not maintain her expression. She had always been the upright class rep who cared about everyone. She got so carried away that what she said sounded rather biased. Oliver looked at Vivian with a stunned expression, a trace of disappointment appearing in his eyes. "Nicole, what do you mean by that? What did you take our class's collective effort for? For you to so sarcastically proclaim that all our efforts are not comparable to yours, a person who doesn't even pay attention in class at all?" Nicole glanced up at her with a trace of inexplicable iciness in her voice. "You claimed that I have ulterior motives, and they chose to believe your foolish claims. So, I have no choice but to prove it, right?" She leaned back against the chair. Her face was clearly expressionless, yet it had a sharp edge to it that made it impossible for anyone to look away. Gary stared at Nicole in a daze as he felt that figure on the racetrack inexplicably appearing before his eyes. And when everyone heard what Nicole said, all of them were stunned. "Yeah, we have always been subjectively judging Nicole's thoughts and actions. We've always chosen to believe anything that was against Nicole. Could it be because of that Nicole had no choice but to choose such a merciless way to prove her innocence? To cut off all connections with us, she said something that had no room to turn back so that she could let everyone hear her voice clearly. But Nicole did not even deign to be bothered about us, so there was no need to hide anything. Even so, she did not need to say something like this when she had no intentions of affecting our studies." Everyone looked at Nicole and, for a time, was at a loss on how to react. Nicole was not at all concerned about what they were thinking as she just sat there and waited for the school bell to ring. Mr. Kennedy was seated in Ms. Emerson's office for a drink. He looked at her packing up her teaching materials before him with a sarcastic look on his face. "Ms. Emerson, the Math Olympiad is about to take place soon. I wonder, how's your class's preparation?" The students they had picked were all fully prepared as this time they were aiming for the prizes. Thinking of the zero-score Nicole in Ms. Emerson's class, Mr. Kennedy chuckled softly, his tone extremely sarcastic. "Once the Math Olympiad is over, we'll have the honor to witness the first Royal Creek Institute student come back with a 0. And it'll be that Nicole from your class." Ms. Emerson looked at Mr. Kennedy indifferently, who was boasting, and she said nothing. It was Mr. Lewis who came in to discuss some maths questions with Ms. Emerson, who shook his head in disagreement. "Mr. Kennedy, don't jump to conclusions that soon." In his heart, Nicole had always been an unpredictable one. Yet, Mr. Kennedy only gave Mr. Lewis a cold look. He's just a maths teacher and has little prestige in school. He can't even be a head teacher, so he can't do anything at all. Thinking of this, Mr. Kennedy gave Mr. Lewis a glance as he said, "Mr. Lewis, you're already in this sorry state, so don't bother trying to lecture me, yeah?" Mr. Lewis knew this was the typical Mr. Kennedy, so he shook his head and said nothing else. He then got up as he chuckled, and said goodbye to Ms. Emerson. "Ms. Emerson, you should go to your class. Let's not delay." As he said that, he walked out, not giving Mr. Kennedy a look at all. Seeing that Mr. Kennedy did not even take him seriously, Mr. Lewis felt there was no need for him to tell the former why Nicole had scored 0 previously. Let's just wait for Nicole to slap him on the face. Mr. Lewis could not help but to want to see Mr. Kennedy's face when the time came. Ms. Emerson had walked behind him and out of her office as she casually locked the door behind her. Mr. Kennedy found it difficult to keep his composure when the two were ignoring him. Seeing that Ms. Emerson was about to lock him inside her office, he gave a dissatisfied yell. "Ms. Emerson, what's wrong with you? Can't you see there's someone in here? Why are you locking the door?" When Ms. Emerson heard his voice, she turned around and gave him a surprised look. "Mr. Kennedy, whose office is this again?" Mr. Kennedy did not catch the drift and thought this woman had lost her mind, so much so that she did not recognize her own office, so he disdainfully said, "Ms. Emerson, what are you saying? This is, of course, your office." Ms. Emerson stood outside with her teaching materials in hand as she said with a half-smile, "Since it's my office, why can't I lock it when I'm out?" When Mr. Kennedy heard that, he was at a loss for words and could only stare at her for a good while before finding his tongue. "There's still someone inside. Can't you wait for me to leave before locking?" As he said that, he increased his pace as he walked to the door. Ms. Emerson looked at him impassively as she stood by the door. Mr. Kennedy thought she was scared into submission by him. "She has always been meek before me. She has never said anything back. It must be the same now too." Yet, just as he was about to step out the door triumphantly, Ms. Emerson's soft voice rang out. "I was about to lock the door because there was no one inside." Mr. Kennedy thought, what did she mean? It took him a good while to realize that Ms. Emerson was implying that he was no one. He was so angry that the cup in his hand shook, splashing hot water all over himself as he screamed. "Ms. Emerson, just you wait. Once the exam results are out, let's see if you can pull that look at me again. Miss Thompson had already promised me that once the exam results are out, the Best Teacher Award is mine. Just you wait." Ms. Emerson did not even look back as she swept her hair aside, and her face was no longer fearful. "In any case, since the two of them are complicit, I will suffer no matter what I do, so why should I continue to be aggrieved?" After class, Ms. Emerson called Nicole over to her side and went through the time and date of the Math Olympiad. Nicole looked at her face as she seriously noted them down. Her expression still remained impassive. Vivian looked at Nicole, her gaze icy. Many, too, were dissatisfied when they saw Ms. Emerson was so close to Nicole. Ms. Emerson is actually hoping for Nicole to score? They could forgive what she said earlier, but they did not believe Nicole, whom they assumed to be academically inept and trouble-causing, could get good results. Thinking of what Nicole said earlier, many were still disdainful of her. Yet, Nicole was not bothered by what they were thinking. After she was done talking to Ms. Emerson, she slothfully packed her stuff up as if she was totally unconcerned about everything here. The classes for the day ended in a blink of an eye, and Nicole picked up her bag as she walked out. Gary looked at her back as he got up and wanted to chase after her. Just as he was about to zip up his bag, he was suddenly patted on the back. Gary looked back irritably, thinking that it was Jack and Wayne pulling some kind of prank. Yet, what entered his gaze was Vivian's slightly shy face. Gary's impression of this girl remained at the level of being the class rep, and her studies were decent. He did not know her at all, let alone be familiar with her. When he turned back and saw her, Gary was faintly surprised. "What are you looking for me for?" He did not think that Vivian would be stopping him here for no reason. Vivian looked at Gary standing before her. She had already taken notice of him since the first day of school. To her, he was not only the youngest child of the Finley family, but he was also cold yet handsome, like a character out of fiction. When she helped him register for school, his cold eyebrows seemingly came alive, as if his gaze toward her was hers alone. He said he was Gary Finley. Vivian inexplicably felt that his name was not on the register, but instead, he was personally told that he was Gary Finley. That was when the illusion began, ambiguous and hazy. It was then that Vivian fell into a cage she had set for herself. Just like now, as Vivian looked at Gary, who seemed to be very pleasant, a genuine smile appeared on her face. "Look, I knew it. Gary treats me differently." Yet, as she dithered and did not speak, she failed to notice Gary's, who wanted to chase after Nicole, impatient eyes. Vivian recomposed herself as she put forth her best class rep poses as she asked Gary, "Gary, the Math Olympiad is tomorrow. How's your preparation?" She was worried about her personal exam results back then and did not participate in the Math Olympiad with Gary. Now she was so regretful her insides turned. After Gary heard Vivian's question, His expression did not change much. He assumed that she was just worried about the class overall grades and asked about it. No need to worry about it. Just that I'm not sure if I can get first place. He was definitely in contention for prizes, but whether he could clinch first place or not, Gary could not say that he had 100% confidence. Vivian looked at the boy standing before her. Her heart tightened a little when she saw him frown. It's okay, Gary. You're already awesome enough. In the end, it's all because of Nicole making that meaningless bet. She isn't good at all, yet she's still acting tough. For some reason, Ms. Emerson trusts her a lot now, that even I'm no match for her. As she went on, Vivian started to complain non-stop. Gary's expression became more and more irritable. His upbringing did not allow him to interrupt her directly, and as he listened to Vivian's increasingly outrageous aspersions against Nicole, his eyes gradually turned cold. Enough. Vivian looked at Gary, whose eyes had a fit of anger in them, in shock, not realizing where she had provoked him. Gary could not be bothered with her as he zipped up his bag and slung it over his back before walking out, without even turning his head back. Vivian looked at his cold back and clenched her fist angrily. A completely different twist took hold in her eyes. Everything she said just now was targeted at Nicole. She had thought that Gary had seen through Nicole's real person and would definitely be in agreement with her. Yet, she did not expect him to react like this. Thinking of this, Vivian's expression became extremely sullen. If she was not wrong, there were no books in Gary's half-opened bag just now. There was only a shirt inside it. My eyesight is good. I saw the handwriting on the shirt. It was Nicole's signature I have seen countless times on her homework. For Gary to have Nicole's signature in his bag only means one thing: he has betrayed me. Vivian looked at Gary's departing silhouette as she bizarrely calmed down. I cannot blame him. It's all that succubus, Nicole's fault. Harvey was right, that Nicole is totally a demon. Thinking of this, Vivian walked to Nicole's already empty desk and toppled it onto the ground. The latter's books then scattered all over the floor, yet Vivian did not hold back and instead viciously stomped on it a few times. There were a few classmates who had not yet left and were looking at her in shock. Vivian then let out a gentle smile. I'm fine. It's just that the stress for the exam is a bit high. As she said that, she walked back to her seat, packed up, and left. Nicole first went to the cafe and drank a cup of coffee made by Jared himself as she went through her workbook. She then looked at her phone and urged Austin to come over to study. The latter then replied with an emoji of him rushing over. A smile appeared in Nicole's eyes before quickly disappearing. She gently tapped her finger on the wooden table. Her expression was impassive. Nicole sat where Jared often sat, and it was by a tall window. The golden sunlight shone through the white curtain onto her face, making her look inexplicably serene. Claus happened to catch a passing glance and was stunned for a moment. It took him a while before he snapped back as he took his phone out and wanted to take a photo of the beautiful girl. Her slightly disheveled hair floating next to her snow-white face looked extremely immaculate and beautiful. Just as she was inside his shutter frame, the girl's figure suddenly disappeared, and in her place was the back of a tall man. Although this back was wide-shouldered and narrow-waisted, with a cold pride to it, it was the back of the man that Claus was most familiar with. Claus looked at his boss, giving him a warning glance as he put down his phone. It's just a photo of Miss Nicole. You sure are stingy, Mr. Johnston. Claus resentfully returned to stirring the syrup in the mixer as he started working again without daring to utter a word. It's hard enough to get a job at this day and age, might as well cherish it. Nicole did not notice the undercurrent between the two as she looked at Jared, who was walking toward her, and the chill in her eyes melted away. Not busy today? When Jared heard her question, he raised his eyebrow. There was a tinge of reservation on his face that was inconsistent with his temperament. As long as you're around, I'm not busy. When Claus heard that, he had goosebumps all over. You're not busy, sure, but I sure am. Nicole understood what he meant between the lines as she looked at him playfully before she stopped talking and instead cast her gaze outside. What are you looking at? She heard Jared asking softly. Nicole did not answer, but a tinge of emotion appeared in her eyes as she looked at the brilliant sky outside before sighing softly inwardly. What nice weather, yet it is not long enough. Nicole looked back, and Jared was sitting opposite her, leaning back lazily on the chair. Yet his aura was still imposing. His eyes had deep contours, and with it was an indescribable distant and cold air about him. He was like the icy moon hanging in the sky that will never come close to the mortal realm. Seeing Nicole looking over, his beautiful eyes curved a little. "What's the matter?" It was a gaze so brilliant that it enthralled everyone. There were many women after his affection. There was Chloe trying to get close to him at Nottingbrook, and there was Liana falling head over heels for him. His identity was extraordinary, and this sort of annoyance was inevitable. Nicole felt that there was a reason why Mrs. Wallace Sr. liked him the most. She felt inexplicably conflicted as she gently leaned forward and looked him in the eye, with a tinge of iciness in her voice. "What will you do if I need to leave for a period of time?" When Jared heard the question, he instantly blurted out, "Where are you going? Let's go together." The moment he said that, both of them were dumbstruck. Jared was now contemplating seriously. After all, he had never had to worry about the question of separation, and now with Nicole raising the question, he spoke his heart's desire without even thinking. It was as if it was natural. Nicole totally did not expect this answer. She seriously considered the feasibility of this plan for a few seconds before answering. No. She wanted to look for Carl after her exams, but the journey will be perilous, and she had no way to guarantee his safety. When Jared heard her answer, something flashed across his eyes, but he did not insist and instead softly said, "Then I'll wait for you." Nicole looked at him as a smile soon appeared in her eyes. Her voice was calm yet comforting. "All right." Just as the two were talking, Austin and the gang rushed over like a hurricane, and Nicole could hear him from afar. "Boss, I'm here." Sammy was behind him with a disdainful look on his face, yet when he saw Nicole, his eyes lit up. "Boss, the Math Olympiad is tomorrow. How are your preparations?" Nicole looked at him and softly said, "Decent enough." Austin knew that his boss was humble, but after some pondering, he realized that the Math Olympiad was known to be difficult, so he was wondering if he should not be putting more pressure on her. "Boss, decent enough is good enough. Just do as much as you can. It doesn't matter if you don't ace it." Nicole looked at him and said nothing. Instead, she just got up and prepared to go upstairs. "Let's go." The final revision. Jared sat there, and as he looked at Nicole's back, a thought appeared in his mind. After Nicole was done giving tuition to Austin and the others, she returned home. She first gave Mr. Riddle Sr. a comprehensive examination. Once she was sure that he had fully recovered, she nodded with satisfaction. Grandpa can eat as usual now, and it's no longer necessary for him to stay in bed. Suitable meals and exercises will help with his recovery. Daniel, who was seated by the side, nodded. Mr. Riddle Sr. was elated. He had enough of being bedridden and immediately got down to walk a few circles. By the time he returned to his bed, Mr. Riddle Sr. had looked at Nicole before him, as if he was reminded of something, and he asked with a serious tone, "Is it the Math Olympiad tomorrow?" Seeing Nicole nodding, Mr. Riddle Sr. sighed deeply as he said, seemingly having given up, "Just treat it like a game. I'm not asking you to score well in the Olympiad, but just don't come back with 0 again." He sounded as if the Olympiad would end up as a tragedy for Nicole. Dylan had just walked in and heard his father's compromise with Nicole and was a little unhappy. "Dad, what's the matter? Don't you know that Mr. Wyants will be personally attending the awards ceremony of that Math Olympiad? If he sees a child of the Riddle family being so poor in her academics, we can probably forget about that land." Daniel, however, looked at Nicole with confidence in his eyes. "Nicole will never be like what you've said." In his heart, his daughter was definitely not such a pushover. Back then, it must have been the first time Nicole encountered San Joto's Math Olympiad questions, and that was why she scored 0. As long as she puts in her normal effort, even if she does not win any prizes, she will not hold anyone back either, thought Daniel. Nicole looked at Daniel as she heard that. His face was full of expectations of her, and her expression softened. She turned around and looked at Mr. Riddle Sr., her voice firm. "I will definitely take the first place." "What? Take first place?" Not only Dylan, even Damien, who had been silent thus far, laughed. No matter how good Nicole was at Great Oak, she is now in San Joto, a place brimming with talent. Trying to get first place is extremely difficult. Dylan could barely hide his mocking tone as he said loudly, "Nicole, you are sure good at pulling someone's leg. Even I'm impressed by your ability to be so fearlessly boastful." Damien, too, adjusted his glasses as he looked at Nicole with deep disagreement. "Nicole, you're being way too conceited. It's fine being confident while you're young, but overconfidence is folly." Nicole ignored the two of them, with a look of cold indifference in her eyes. Even Mr. Riddle Sr. looked at her somewhat worriedly, concerned that she was under too much pressure. Thinking of this, Mr. Riddle Sr. coughed a little. "It's almost time now. Let's go downstairs to start the banquet." He tapped his walking stick onto the ground as he looked at Dylan and Damien and snorted coldly. "Shouldn't Snow, Rain, and Chloe be coming home to visit?" Dylan nodded to indicate that there was no problem on his side. On the other hand, Damien recalled that Chloe did not even come to visit when Mr. Riddle Sr. had recovered the other day and frowned deeply. Chloe sure is too much of late. When the three names were mentioned together, something occurred in Nicole's mind. She impassively turned and went downstairs, yet she had some thoughts in her mind. Looking at Nicole's departing silhouette, Dylan chuckled inside. Just 2 more days, and Nicole's fate will be sealed. Everyone had gone downstairs, and Preston, upon seeing Nicole sitting not too far away, went over to sit by her side. Nicole ignored him and simply just held her elbow as she thought about things. Samuel and the others had also rushed back, and their gazes all fell upon Nicole. Stanley looked at his little sister and asked gently, "Nicole, the Olympiad is tomorrow. Do we need to send you to the venue?" When Spencer and Samuel heard this, they gave Stanley a big thumbs up. They had talked about this in the car, yet when they sat beside Nicole, they almost forgot about it. Nicole nodded at Stanley and thanked him. Hearing this, Stanley let out a warm smile, yet Preston by the side twitched his lips. If they did not say anything, he would have the opportunity to drop her off. Thinking of this, he prodded Nicole. Seeing that the table was still yet to be filled, he whispered, "Do you know the hackers that attacked our website?" Nicole returned an imperceptible nod. Preston was not annoyed by her cold demeanor as he continued to ask, "Who are they? Why couldn't we find anything about him after so long?" Nicole took a sip before looking at him and said plainly, "Your company's international server is connected to a different frequency port than his. He is an assassination-type hacker, so he is very protective about his data security, and that's why you could not find anything." She knew the opposing party's codename, and she initially did not want to dig deeper into the matter. But this time, the party was clearly aiming after the things produced by Rowan and his team, so Nicole could not just sit idly by. The personal logo on that batch of data was something even Zeke could recognize, so how could Nicole not? Thinking of this, Nicole looked at Preston and said somewhat flatly, "Do you know the people behind your company?" Nicole thought, someone must have been secretly funding Rowan's lab. Without the help of this person, they would not have been able to bear even a year of the research cost. Yet this time, the person did not do anything even when Rowan's lab was in such a big data breach crisis. This was not normal at all. Unless, they already knew that someone would strike. For that hacker to so easily send out a message for help, and also that self-congratulatory message on top that disappeared without a trace, it was as if the person was deliberately getting Zeke to find this task. The opponent knew I was connected to Zeke and had contacted him in real life. That means... Nicole's eyes narrowed as she quickly thought of something before a strange look appeared on her face. Is it really what I think it is? Preston did not miss the change in her expression, and just as he was about to ask Nicole something, a voice came from behind. Preston, you might want to talk to Nicole less. When Preston heard the voice, he frowned a little. It was Snow's voice, yet it was not gentle or magnanimous like before, but it sounded inexplicably strange. Rain chimed in. Yes, Preston, Mom is already very unhappy seeing you together with Nicole. Can you not make things difficult for us? Preston frowned deeply as he glanced at his 2 younger sisters, with almost uncontrollable irritation in his heart. Can't these 2 just talk properly? Thinking of this, he spoke icily towards Snow and Rain. Mom is Mom, and me is me. So, I'm supposed to not do anything that displeases her? Nicole is also a riddle, and I cannot even sit with her? Snow, Rain, I seriously don't know where your hostility toward Nicole came from." When Snow and Rain heard his unfettered words, their expression changed. Snow quickly sneered as her eyes could literally light on fire as she looked at Nicole. "You are asking me why? My dear brother, it's because the Nicole that you like so much is the thief that stole my precious diamond." Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.